What's up guys, it's Z here, welcome back to Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck of the Day. Today we are updating Sky Strikers with the release of the recent ban list. Mystic Mine is finally gone off the face of the earth, and now Sky Striker players are kinda wondering how the deck is going to develop moving forward, because playing Mystic Mine in Strikers has been the standard strategy for, well, very long time now, and it has seen the most success. Don't think we've seen a Sky Striker list do well without even at least playing 2 copies of Mystic Mine in the main deck, and let alone lately, people have been playing even cards like Demise of the Land Turboids. So yeah, the deck is going to be very, very different from now on. So now let's see exactly how the deck can pretty much evolve in order to still be able to combat the meta, because we all know Strikers are a deck that we all love to play, and we just always try to make it work somehow. And because of the way the deck functions, it does have the room to pretty much play anything it wants to be able to combat the meta. And in a tier 0 format like the one we have right now, it's very easy to prepare your deck to counter one specific deck, because if you have to play against multiple different stuff, then it's not very difficult. But when you have to focus against only one deck, it becomes very easy to just put all the hate in the main deck for it. So now, before we begin with the video, if you enjoyed, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our upcoming content, and now let's get to the deck profile. So starting off with the monsters, we have 3 copies of Ray. Pretty much nothing to explain here. We all know what she does. She's the best card in the deck. She reads recovery, she gives you your link monsters. Yeah, amazing card overall. We play 1 copy of Rose. Now with the release of Linkage that we did get really recently, I don't think that playing more than 1 Rose is ever going to be correct from now on. Before, you could argue for 2 or sometimes maybe even 3 copies because of the lack of consistency, but now with Linkage we do have more ways to get our link monsters on board and start our gameplay, so you don't really need more than 1 copy of her. You play 1 so you can use the OTK with your Linkage, because you need both Ray and Rose in the graveyard in order to get the attack boost, and this is why we do play 1 copy. Her effect to revive herself once you destroy something from the extra monster zone, it does come up sometimes, but not a lot to the point that you want more of her. So yeah, she's not even the greatest starter, because she does have a quick effect to be able to dodge cards that would bounce her or destroy off the field. So yeah, she's a much worse version of Ray, but we do play 1 just for this OTK part of Linkage. Now that we don't have Mystic Mine anymore, you know that we're going to rely back on hand traps, because that's how Striker used to play back in the day when it was the best deck. So we're going to utilize this deck's free room again, because again, we don't have Mystic Mine to set up the game to our own pace, and let alone gather all the resources we need in order to OTK. So we do play a lot of hand traps, and let's start with the most notorious and best hand traps of the format. We start with the Bestial cards. Play 3 copies of Bestial Magnamut. This card is the one that searches you a dragon during the end phase of its summoned. It's basically going to search you another dragon, another Bestial card. You don't play any other dragons in this particular deck, so yeah, these cards, all the Bestials have the same effect. You can banish a light or a dark monster in either graveyard to special summon them, and if your opponent controls a monster on the field, these become quick effects. So they're basically better versions of DD Crow, and in this particular deck, they help you with dealing damage, because Strikers have always been a deck that struggled with going for game and sealing out games when they have the chance, because of the deck's lack of big monsters. So Linkage on top of these cards, giving you the extra power that you need in order to go for game, means that your opponent is not going to have the chance to recover when you are not able to go for game. And yeah, these cards are really, really good. We play 3 copies of Bestial Druid's Worm. This is the card that when it's removed from the field, you can target a special summon monster on your opponent's field and you send to the graveyard. Removal card, hand trap, and also a big body, really good card. We still play 3 copies of Bestial Saronir. This card is not the greatest in the fact that it only works as another hand trap for a Bestial archetype. The effect to send a Bestial or a brand spell and trap in the deck is not really worth utilizing in Strikers, because you don't have anything good that you would like to send, but again, it's a 25k beater that can be used as a hand trap and give you more damage and more link climb. These being dark means that you can go for Dark the Dark Charmer, which is an amazing link monster because of the tier 0 deck being a dark based deck, being tier elements. So yeah, we need to max out on all these cards just because of how good they are. But if you thought that we were done with hand traps, no, we're still keep going strong. We have 3 copies of Ghost Bell and Haunted Mansion, which is basically another graveyard hit hand trap that you need to play in order to be able to not only stop the tier element effects from fusioning, but also when you're going for your plays, if your opponent uses effects like Mudora and Keldo during your own turn from their graveyard to disrupt your graveyard by sending, for example, copies of Ray back so you don't get to float or anything else, you can use this in order to stop that effect as well. And we also play 3 copies of DD Crow, rounding out the total hand trap count to 15, because you need to play a lot, because just seeing 1 is not going to be enough against tier elements. Unless your hand is really suboptimal, 1 hand trap is not enough to stop this deck, so you need to play a total amount that you could consistently see 2 copies in your opening hand, just so you can have a slight of chance to fight them, because they can sometimes even play around 2 hand traps. But again, playing to the point that you would see 3 hand traps, your deck becomes so inconsistent that it would not be that great. So yeah, 15 is a really good amount to play. You're going to see 2 of them consistently in your hand, and hopefully you can survive with these 2 hand traps you see in your hand, and then go with your engine moving forward. And all the hand traps have to be graveyard hate. Even Ash Blossom is not considered that good anymore, just because of how good the graveyard effects of the Shizu Tier Element archetype are. Now, moving on to the spell cards, we have 3 copies of Linkage. This is one of the recent cards that we got, and it's a card that fixes a lot of the problems for the deck. For once, it gives you 3 more starters. By sending a card you control to the graveyard, you can special summon a Sky Striker monster from your extra deck to the extra monster zone. It locks you into strikers from the extra deck, but it doesn't matter too much because you don't play too many monsters in the extra deck that are not Sky Strikers, and also it doesn't lock you from special summoning main deck monsters, so you can still use the Bestials even under this cast restriction. And also the fact that it boosts your monsters by 1000. If you have a dark and a light Sky Striker monster in your graveyard, means that you will be able to go for OTKs when you combine this card with Ray, because you can do the 8000 OTK combo if your opponent's board is completely clear. So it gives some more pressure to a deck that desperately needs more firepower in order to go for game. We play 3 copies of Widow Anchor. That's pretty standard. You need this card in order to be able to negate effects, steal monsters, push for game. Yeah, that's basically the best spell that strikers have at 3 right now, because Engage is at 1. We have 3 copies of Shark Cannon. This is a format reliant card, but again, this format we do need as much graveyard hate as possible. So yeah, this is a format that you definitely need to max out on this card, because it gives you a lot of disruption during your turn and also during your opponent's turn as a quick play spell, and also gives you more monsters on the field to be able to link climb and push for game. We play 2 copies of Area Zero. With all the Bestials that we have in the main deck, we need to be able to get rid of our own monsters somehow if we want to activate spells before we commit to some plays. So using this card to get rid of our Bestials to maybe get another Surge, using Linkage to get rid of Bestials to be able to go into more cards, means that you will be able to use the effects like Linkage to be able to send this card to the grave, get a monster to the extra monster zone, and then you can use this card to get a Ray or a Rose from the deck depending on what you need. You need to be able to clear your main monster zone before you activate any of your good spells like Linkage, Widow Anchor, Engage, Shark Cannon. So these bestial monsters, unless you get 2 of them in your opening hand, which then means that you can link them away into a dark, you will need to clear them one of your own ways when you start your own turn in order to be able to play. So yeah, 2 copies of Area Zero. You can consider 3, but 3 can be too bricky. I feel like 2 is fine. We do play 1 Terraforming to search it, so it's fine as a 2. Now for the 1 of Sky Striker spells, we play 1 copy of Afterburners. This is a card that you need in the main deck in order to be able to fight against backrow decks. The deck doesn't have the best matchup against backrow decks if you don't play this card, and some people rely on siding this card, but I feel like with cards like Macrocosmos and Diffusor going to 3 in this ban list, at least for the beginning of the format, a lot of people are going to experiment with stun decks in order to be able to fight Tier 0 Shizu Tier Elements, so at least for the first few weeks, you need some sort of backrow removal in your main deck, no matter what deck you're playing, if you don't want to lose to cards like this, especially if your deck gets hurt by cards like Macrocosmos, and Sky Strikers definitely do, because not only are you not going to get your Ray in the graveyard, but if your spells get banished, you don't get the extra effects, and you lose your boost stats from Kagari and Shizuku. We do play 1 copy of Engage, of course. This is the best card in the deck. The more you can loop this card, better. You can always use it whenever you want, as long as you don't banish it with multi-roll, because you can keep getting it back Kagari. If we ever get back more copies of this card, then you can expect that this deck is going to just keep getting stronger and stronger, because we do get new Sky Striker support, but the thing is, these new cards don't compare to a card like Engage, so if Konami really wants to support this deck, then they should bring this card to at least 2 copies, just like in the OCG, because the OCG does have 2 copies of this card, and pretty much nobody uses it as an engine, so I don't feel like it would be that much of a problem. Maybe at 3, yes, it would be too consistent, but at 2, maybe Konami can experiment, and if it's a problem, they can put it back to 1 again. But yeah, new support is never going to compare to a card like Engage. We have 1 copy of Multi-Roll, another card that could easily come back to more copies, because this card is not something that would be splashed even if it was at 3. It's a card that only Sky Striker decks can use. It's basically a spellbook of judgment of the deck by giving you all of your spells back. Being able to make your spells uninteractable also is a really good thing, and also again, dealing with your own main deck monsters before you can use your spell cards is really good. So yeah, this card, if it goes to more than 1 copy, then you can definitely expect that we're going to play as many copies as we can. We play 1 copy of Hornet Drones. This is another starter. This is the only card that should stay at 1 from the deck, because it's a card that can be used in pretty much anything without even having to activate an Engage or something like that. So yeah, Hornet Drones is the most generic card that you would use, so it's fine being at 1, but the rest can definitely get more copies because of how either not splashable they are, or how not consistent they are. For some staples, we do play Reinforcement of the Army to search Ray or Rose. We do play Terraforming to search our field spell. We do play Call by the Grave, another graveyard hate card that can be used as a backer. Again, your opponent is either going to activate a card effect on your turn or on their turn, so you're never going to be able to miss using this card, because you're going to use it offensively or defensively, but you're using it regardless. And Call by the Grave is a broken card all around, but even now, if it's not being used to dodge hand traps, it's still an amazing card. And the last card in the main deck is 3 copies of Pot of Prosperity. The deck, even with linkage, it does see some inconsistency, so you need a card like this in order to be able to see your cards. If you don't have the budget for a card like this, Desires can be decent, but if you play Desires, then I would recommend playing more copies of Rose, because you need this Rose in order to push for a game with your linkage, so maybe I would play 2. But if you have access to Prosperity, it's an amazing card for the deck, because sometimes you see a hand full of spells with no starters, or a handful of starters without any good utility spells, so you need to find the card you're looking for specific. For the extra deck, we played 3 copies of Kagari. This is pretty standard. You don't need to play any less unless you're playing something like with an engine, like with a deck like the Adventure, but I feel like this version is long overdue. People don't really play a version like this without Anaconda, because when they used to play a Sky Striker deck that was mostly an engine with Enforcer and with the Brave stuff, they were using Anaconda as the threshold to be able to go in all things, but now without Anaconda, you kind of have to main deck whichever thing you need, and you have to basically top deck it in order to be able to use it. So yeah, we do play 3 Kagari in pure Sky Strikers, no questions asked. We also play 3 Shizuku, giving you a surge during the end phase. She's the card that pretty much lets you keep up all of your advantage, because the moment all of your cards get banished, either by multi-roll or maybe by a DD Crow by your opponent, you start losing cards that you can add back Kagari, so you need to be able to search multiple copies pretty much every single turn in order to still have some in your graveyard to get back, so Shizuku helps Kagari more than you would think. We play 3 copies of Hayate. Now, Hayate is a card that can be considered at 2 copies if you need space for something else, but I don't think there is another extra deck card that I would really like to put in the extra deck so that I would cut Hayate. And the thing with Hayate is that now that we have engaged, sometimes you want to go for your Hayate before you go into a Shizuku, even going first when you activate like an Area 0 on your Ray, because of the off chance that you get lucky and you excavate engage. If you have gone for Shizuku right away, then you basically lose this +1 that you can use to get Kagari back, because otherwise you're not going to get the end phase search with Shizuku, because you can only special summon them once per turn. So Hayate is basically the fodder that you go into before you do your plays, just to see if you can get a bit lucky, which can be a bit optimistic, but you would be surprised of how many scenarios this can actually happen. So yeah, I feel like the 3rd Hayate helps a lot, not only with pushing for damage, but being a stepping stone to the rest of your link monsters. We do play 1 copy of Kaina. You still need 1 Kaina to survive some OTKs, because there are a lot of decks, not only the best deck, but a lot of other decks that can push for a lot of damage very quickly, so you need to be able to have this card in order to survive. We do play 2 copies of Zeke. Now, the Bestials kind of force you to play 2nd Zeke. If you don't play the Bestials in your deck, then you can get away with only playing 1, but because you do play so many monsters that will occupy your main monster zones, you need to have 2 copies of Zeke throughout the entirety of the game to keep using them as link material to free up your main monster zone, so you'll be able to use your spells. So yeah, this card at 2 is fine when you play the Bestials, but you can definitely play 1 if you don't include the Bestials in deck. We do play 1 copy of Dark Charmer Gloomy, because we all have all of these dark monsters in our deck. This card is very easy to summon, especially with the Bestials, and being able to get this card easy access to pretty much any deck that can do it, especially against when you're playing against the Sisu tier elements, gives you access to really good monsters, because their best monsters are dark attribute, so you can always have something to steal with this card. We do play 1 copy of Nightmare Unicorn. This usually link climbs from dark when you go for game, because you use dark, you steal a monster, you link climb into Unicorn, you get rid of another card, and then for the final thing, you go into your 1 copy of Access Code Talker. After you spin a card with Unicorn, you destroy as many cards as you can with Access Code Talker, which is really easy in this particular deck because all the link monsters are different attributes, and then you hit them for 53, and hopefully you have enough damage to be able to go for game. So yeah, these 3 cards are the only non-Sky Striker cards that I feel like you need to play in your extra deck. I don't think that anything else is absolutely necessary. Yes, you can include an Ingirsu or a Phoenix here and there sometimes, but I don't think they give you too much value, and they don't offer anything that deck can't already do. So yep, Sky Striker guys are pretty much back to how they used to be. Without Mystic Mine, they have to become a hand trap control type of deck that is going to slow down the pace of the game as much as possible, so your opponent is not going to overwhelm you with a lot of advantage, and then you start overwhelming them back by getting all of your searches and your pluses with your spells. So yeah, this deck, it's definitely got worse with the release of the ban list, but still, I know a lot of people are going to try it out, they're going to test it, and we'll see exactly if Sky Strikers once again can manage to top events, because I don't think there has ever been a format ever since Engage got back that Sky Strikers have not been able to sneak in at least 1 top every single time. So yep, that's the deck guys. If you enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our upcoming content, and we'll see you next time.